right before I talk, but it's already gone, so I'm okay now. And if I, for some reason, can't talk anymore, because I do get nervous, I'm gonna ask my friend Mark to come on up and he'll finish. But no, I didn't know he was coming, and his dad came, and they're really cool, and I'm gonna be talking a little bit about Mark and his group's endeavors. They're called Small Town Monsters. He's part of the Small Town Monster crew, and they make really cool documentaries about small town monsters. So I'm actually giving you guys a plug in here, and you didn't even know. But anyway, I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I'm really self-conscious because I have to go to the dentist later this week because I'm missing a tooth and a half. And when this happened, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, which is one of the reasons I have this bucket list and everything. And when that happened, I was like, oh, maybe I should cancel all of my speaking engagements. And I was like, oh no, why? So I just feel like just get it out there. Some teeth, ta-da. All right. But I'm getting them fixed. And the good news is I'm here and I'm alive. So, you know, that's what the treatments did, then that's okay. So, my name is Amy Bue. I would say Bue like a ghost because it's B-U-E and sometimes people don't know how to pronounce it. And I am a teacher in Youngstown, Ohio. So I teach middle schoolers, especially 7th graders by day. Look for Bigfoot the rest of the time. I know that when people go to see a Bigfoot researcher or enthusiast or whatever you want to call me, I'm not sure what to call me, but definitely not an expert. Maybe I'm not what people think about when they think about that, or maybe that's not what you expect to see. And I do go out quite a bit into the field, and we were just talking about how it's normally me and a bunch of dudes. I love the dudes, but it's always nice to see more women that are interested in this too. There are a lot of women interested in it, but it doesn't seem like as many get out there, or maybe not as many talk about it publicly. So I have a great group of ladies that I do things with, but I love to see you here. So thank you for coming. I'm also a grant writer, a technical writer, have my own small business doing that. Hopefully someday somebody's gonna give me a grant to find Bigfoot, you know, but it hasn't happened yet. I'm a grandma, the cutest baby in the world. Mom, all kinds of things. But we're here tonight to talk about my passion for Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, or the hairy man, or the grass man, or the Inumitopee, or the Juniqua, or whatever you want to call them, because there's all kinds of names for them. How many of you here, I like to ask this too, believe that Bigfoot is real? If you don't want to raise your hand, it's okay. All right. Okay, how many of you here, somebody dragged you here, you were like, you're in the wrong room? That has happened to me. I got a really good contact one time because this guy was supposed to be down the hall listening to a lady talk about the birds of Costa Rica, but he was in my room and he was kind of squashed in the middle, so he didn't leave. And it opened up some really cool things for me because he was from the Audubon Society. And then I spoke for the Audubon Society. So it was really cool. But if you're not really here for me, I won't be offended if you leave, or if you have to go to the bathroom or whatever. So some of you, maybe you're just here or you're just checking it out, don't have anything better to do. And how many of you kind of are in the middle, like you think they could be real, you need more evidence, you haven't seen one for yourself? All right, I would say that I kind of fall into that. But I'm more toward I think they're real than I ever have been before. Like I call myself a hopeful skeptic. I still have this little bit of, you know, I have never had the smoking gun absolute sighting. What if they're not real? Like what if I'm doing all these things and what if they're not real? You know, I wake up sometimes and I think that. But then I think about all the hundreds, if not thousands of people I've spoken to who have no reason that I can figure out to lie about it. And some people who are my best friends and people I trust with my life that are saying, yes, I saw one. And some people are scientists, and I'm going to tell you about this group called Project Zoo Book I'm involved with that have a bunch of scientists in it that say they've seen one. And then I go out to like Washington. I was out there a few weeks ago, and I look at those forests, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, they say over 50 small aircraft have not been found in the Pacific Northwest forests, so there could be something. And I have other reasons why I think they could be real. And then I hear things, or I have been around when other people find footprints. I was just saying, like, I have never happened upon one myself. And I'm not trying to convince anybody, and I'm not trying to convince myself either, but I really, truly think, absolutely, they could be real. And I start more and more to think, yeah, Bigfoot is real. So by the end of this talk, I'll probably think for sure they're real. I like hype myself up. But my talk is going to be about the science of Sasquatch. Another thing I like to say is, when you get into this topic, and I don't know if any of you are like super into it, you get into the Bigfoot community, or community, depending on what you think. There's a lot of different ideas about Sasquatch. So over here you have people like myself who are looking for a living, breathing, pooping creature. You know, a earthly, real creature, okay? I like to say that is my interest, that is my focus, but I also like to say, I don't know if that's right. I have a lot of people who I trust very much who have seen really weird things, and they're maybe over on this side where they think it's kind of paranormal, maybe an alien would be in the middle. I don't know. Like, this is where I'm looking, this is my focus, this is what I'm interested in. If it's something paranormal and stuff, I probably don't want to find it, because I'm a chicken. You know, if being brave, you know, people say being brave is that you are afraid to do something and you do something anyway, then I guess I'm brave, but I don't know if I'm that brave. But I also feel that sometimes the things that people say are paranormal, just we don't know how to explain them yet, right? So, for example, I like to bring up that movie. I don't remember when it was from, 80s, 90s, 2000s. The Gods Must Be Crazy. Anybody ever seen that movie? Where there's a tribe, you know, a very primitive tribe, and a bush plane flies over, and the pilot or somebody drops a Coke bottle out, and the people are like, oh, you know, these from the gods, and it's a Coke bottle. And we all kind of laugh at it, like, it's just a Coke bottle. But they didn't know what a plane was, or a Coke bottle, so to them, that was paranormal, right? So some of the things people are saying they're seeing, I feel we just, you know, they could be absolutely true, but we just don't know how to explain it yet. So I like to say that because if you think differently than I do, I still love it, you know, and I think it's cool that people are looking at things different ways. All right, so all of that is done. I can take a breath, because I know I talk too fast. I have so much to say, and I get excited. I want to leave some time for questions. I would love it if any of you have had experiences and want to share. If you don't want to share in front of all your friends here, because now we're all friends, you can obviously talk to me after or get a business card. It's just bigfootamy@gmail.com, which is pretty easy to remember. My nieces and nephews call me Bigfoot Amy anyway, so I just made that my email. But would love to talk to you. But if I bring something up and then, like I am prone to do, start talking about something else and I forget to continue with what I was talking about, you can be like, wait a minute. You can ask during the talk too. That's fine. So, the science of Sasquatch is what we're going to talk about. And I want to talk about not just some scientific ways to look at Sasquatch, but some scientific projects that are going on right now that not everyone is necessarily aware of. Now, when I was first getting into this, it was in 2012. I was a passenger in a car driving over Meander Reservoir outside of Youngstown, Ohio, which is where I live now in Youngstown. And I was looking out at the water, and I was not thinking about Bigfoot because I wasn't into Bigfoot. I was just a teacher from Youngstown. I lived in Cleveland at the time. We had been to see my father before he passed away. You know, he's sick, and I was not thinking about Bigfoot. I wasn't, you know, I didn't watch the shows. I just never thought about Bigfoot. I had seen Harry and Henderson's. I had seen In Search of, you know, Unsolved Mysteries, that kind of thing. So I was aware of Bigfoot, but it was definitely not in my wheelhouse. So I'm looking out the window, and there is something standing by the water. And it seems to be positioned looking toward these birds that were flying around on these like cement blocks that are in the water that are still there. And I still, every time I go past, I see the birds, but they aren't always flying around, but they were making this big ruckus. So my attention had been drawn to the bird, then I saw it standing there. And I'm like, what is that? Because my perception was that it was very tall and really wide. And when I take reports now, people always talk about how broad-shouldered these things are. And I know it was alive because it's holding onto a tree and it moved. You know, it wasn't like a cutout or a statue or anything like that. It was all one color. And I'm the passenger, right? And I didn't say anything because I'm like, what is that? But in my head, it's what I would think Bigfoot would look like standing there holding onto a tree by me under reservoir. So we zoom past it and I'm like, I think I just saw Bigfoot. And my ex-husband, who's not my ex-husband because of that, but he's like, okay. And he didn't see anything, and I didn't yell that until we were past it, and you can't really stop on that bridge. But the next thing that came into my head was, that's stupid, right? I think I saw Bigfoot, that's stupid. Because number one, there's no such thing as Bigfoot, right? It's me in that car. And number two, there's no such thing as Bigfoot, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So I saw something, and people, you know, will be like, just say it, just say you saw Bigfoot. And I'm like, I don't know what I saw. I was in a moving car, and it was at least 100 yards away, right? So I truly don't know. But when I just did I just was filmed for one of your documentaries, at the end of it, we're standing there, and Meander Reservoir is in the back, and I remember saying, I forget the director's name, he's a new guy. Tyler. Yeah. I said something to the effect of, like, I had never really thought of it this way, but the distance I had seen this thing and how fast we were going, if I had seen a deer there, I would absolutely be able to see or say 12 years later, I saw a deer. And if it was a person, I could say that. And if it was a bear, I could say that, because it didn't have a muzzle and it was straight up and all of that. So anything else, except maybe a hamster or something, I would be able to say what I saw. But because it was something strange, I still don't know. And that is also a very common thing that witnesses say. It kind of messes with your mind when you see something that's not supposed to exist. But I truly, just to be honest, I don't want to fool anybody else. I mostly don't want to fool myself. I'm not sure what I saw, but it looked like Bigfoot. So, even though I convinced myself pretty much right away that was stupid, I decided, you know what, I'm going to look into this. So, I started Googling, you know, Bigfoot. Pretty quickly found out, like, I am not the only one that has seen something, you know, in the world, in North America, in Ohio, and in Mahoning County there. I'm like, okay, like other people are seeing these things? You've got to be kidding me. So I start looking more into it, and I'm like, this is crazy. All these people are saying that they're seeing these everywhere. I had no idea. I just lived my whole life not knowing that there are people seeing these and that they think that it's real. So then I got really fascinated, and I like jumped down the rabbit hole, because I'm like, you know, I need to know what's really going on. Is it like mass hysteria? Is everybody seeing a bear? And there's still articles that come out once in a while. I think one in a pretty prominent scientific journal came out last year that all the Bigfoot sightings are black bear. And I'm like, no, I just don't think so, because one of my favorite things to do now, I don't do as many things for Bigfoot events really anymore as I used to do, although yours I love, and certain ones. I do libraries a lot, and I mostly do outdoor shows, like hunting and fishing shows. And so I get reports and people's stories from hunters and fishermen and just normal people like we are. I'm not always normal, but that's nothing to do with Bigfoot either. So, you know, what was I talking about? See, I just did it. Bears.
The
Bears,
sightings,
thank
yeah.
you. See, this is just like my 7th grade class. I'm like, what was I talking about? So, I don't think everybody's seeing a bear, because I absolutely know I would have known if it was a bear. It was close enough for that. And I don't think everybody's seen that. So something else is going on. So I came to that conclusion pretty quickly. And so then I was almost trying to talk myself out of it, because I kept getting more and more interested. And I was like, okay, well, this still can't be possible, right? Right? Like this, we couldn't have these here. But I started looking into it more, and I went to hear other people talk, and I read every book that I could possibly find on it. This is just a very small collection of the books that I have. So read your books, and interlibrary loan is a fantastic thing. There's my commercial. But I started to think, you know, maybe there could be something to this. So one of the things that I got really interested in quickly was the recent discovery of large primates, or some of them pretty recently and some of them relatively recently. So you have, okay, what do I do for the little light thing?
The little sun on there, the button.
Okay. Usually you don't get to be this fancy, so. I'm gonna start with these guys. These guys we've known about for a while. You know, these are western lowland gorillas. So we've known about mountain gorillas and western lowland gorillas for 100, 150, 200, whatever years. So it's not that recent, but it's still pretty recent. And until they were proven by science, people thought that they were moral tales. They were cryptids, which the library has Cryptid Month, right? This month.
Summer reading.
Yeah, for the summer reading program. And they were animals that people said they saw, but they couldn't prove them to be real. It wasn't that long ago. And the reason that I include those western lowland gorillas is because it was like in the 80s or 90s, and forgive my memory with dates and stuff. I'm in the Cleveland Clinic recovery program for COVID, and I still have to see a speech therapist and stuff, and I like lost most of my memory. But anyway, I still remember a lot now, much better. But I think it was the 80s or 90s that National Geographic had a article about the fact that there were these hunters that had gone into Africa, where the western lowland gorillas were, and they were like, you know, can you show us where they are? And they weren't, I don't think they were hunting to kill, they just wanted to find them. And they couldn't find any. So they were asking the people that lived there. And they said, oh, there's a whole bunch more of them over this way. And they're like, no, they're not supposed to be over there. And they're like, yeah, there's a whole bunch more over this way, like miles away, but they all lived there because the people who lived there, the natives, knew where they were. Well, it kind of went back and forth a little bit, but finally, they got some funding. They sent a bush plane into the area where the natives were saying they were, and they didn't find just like a few more, they found thousands more of these gorillas that nobody knew were in that area until they talked to the natives. I thought that was exciting, even before Bigfoot came into the picture. Here is a new orangutan subspecies that was discovered, and I'm gonna do my little discovery thing, in 2017, which is not very long ago, in Indonesia, I believe it was, in Asia. And the people there, the natives, were saying that these hairy men were in the woods, in the forests, in the jungles, and science was saying, I don't think so. Like maybe at one time, but we don't have a body, and we haven't found any, you know. And I'm very pro-science, just FYI. I understand that you need more proof to say for sure. So I'm not saying that that is a bad thing, but I'm just saying that the people there weren't necessarily believed, right? Until they found them. And all of a sudden, these orangutans are real. Endangered, they're there though, and they're real. This guy is a billy ape, and they are from the Congo. And it was again this century that we had absolute proof that they were still around. And there was a gentleman, and his name just escaped me, but he was like a wildlife photographer, and he was searching for these billy apes that the natives were saying were there. And they would talk about, again, like these hairy wild men that were in the forest, and they would talk about how they would bang on trees, and they would kill lions, and they were immune to their poisonous darts, and they would howl at the moon and do all these things, and that they were tall, and they walked on two legs. And scientists were saying, I don't think so, like for a very long time. So this gentleman was trying to find proof of this, and he would go and he would sleep under the fruit trees, and he would go by himself and sometimes with guides trying to find these apes and couldn't find them. And I don't remember the story about why he wasn't there during this trip, but he sent another small group in to look for them again. And I'm like, I heard that he caught malaria like 20 times or something, so maybe he was back home with malaria, I'm not sure. But there was actually a lady who was in the group, a Western scientist, and she was the first Westerner that we know of who saw a billy ape for the first time. Couldn't get them on camera, they couldn't find them, until she said, she writes about how they were coming through the trees and making this big ruckus, and then they come through the leaves and they stare at the people, and thankfully they retreat. But people ask me, like, would I rather see a gorilla or a chimp in the woods? And I would take a gorilla 100 times over than a chimp. So she was fortunate that they were kind of shocked and retreated. But so far, every single thing that those natives said about those billy apes is true. They were immune to their poison darts. They did bang on trees, which is a very common thing that primates do. Anybody here watch any like Bigfoot shows? Finding Bigfoot or anything like that? And a lot of times they'll go out and bang on trees and stuff. I don't do that so much anymore because I don't really know what I would be saying to something. But it's fun. And especially like if I've been in an area for a while and nothing happens, I'll bang on everything, trying to get a response. But there's a reason they do that, because chimps do that. They show their territory with banging noises and kind of use it for communication, so it's not a bad idea. But everything they said was true, and they're real. And then this guy down here is my favorite. That's a cross river gorilla. And the reason he is my favorite is because of Project Zoo Book, the group I'm going to tell you about in a few minutes. One of our gorilla guys, because I work with primatologists and primate zoologists now, the curator at a zoo that he used to work for was one of the first Westerners that saw a cross river gorilla. And until this century, since the year 2000, we didn't even have them on pictures or videos or anything. And you can Google like the first footage of cross river gorillas. They're on the border of Cameroon and Nigeria and the Cross River region. And you can see that first video where all these female gorillas are kind of coming out from all the trees. And what are they doing? They're all staring right at the camera. And then male comes into view, and he's staring at the camera. And then he bluff charges the camera, runs right past it, and they don't like that camera. And I'm sure you get the same question. One of the questions we get the most is, why aren't there more pictures? And I get it. I want to know those things too. But when I first saw that, I was like, wow, like they are really aware of that camera, and they avoided it for all those years. Like I think it was 2009 maybe that we finally got them on camera. And the guy that I'm talking about, the curator that was over there looking, he looked for 8 years in the jungle with a few guides. They would find nests, which is important. I'm going to tell you about some nests. They found footprints, but they could not find any gorillas until one day he finally saw a few for a total of 10 seconds. And then that was it. He didn't have time to take a picture. I go out in the woods as often as possible. And one time I was like here taking pictures at a scenic overlook, and something came out of the woods to my right and around me, and it was a big black bear. So I had just put my phone away after I took those pictures, so it was here, but this bear is like right here, doing that. And I'm like, oh, this is how I'm gonna die. It always goes through my head. This is how it ends. And black bears don't normally bother you, but they certainly could. And all I remember is like I didn't move, but I did say, "Hi, bear." I did say that. I remember that. Like prayed that it would leave, and she did. She went that way, and as soon as she turned a corner, I went that way. But I didn't like say cheese. I didn't think about it at the time, so it doesn't bother me so much. And once I saw those gorillas looking at that camera, I don't know if they could smell something, hear something, see something like infrared or something coming off those cameras, but somehow they had avoided them for all of that time, and it doesn't bother me so much, that question. Also, they think there's only 200 to 300 of them left. They're severely endangered. So my opinion, for what it's worth, and it isn't worth much, but my opinion is if Bigfoot is a living, breathing creature somewhere like Pennsylvania, Ohio, where a lot of sightings have taken place, I don't think there would be that many of them for us not to have more concrete proof of them. So just my opinion, for what it's worth. But that's one of the reasons I do what I do, and I think they could be real. Oops, I'm doing that instead of the next thing. There, okay. My biggest reason that I think Bigfoot could be real is the testimony of Native Americans and First Nations people. It is absolutely fascinating. And the more I do this, the more fortunate and blessed I feel I've become because I've been able to work with different tribes. I'm going to show you some pictures of some people from my group, Project Zoo Book, that were asked to come out to the Blackfoot Nation in Montana. And we camped out there. And it was scary because we had just seen 2 different grizzly bears. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to see them up close and personal. And they were far away from where we camped, but we were camping like overlooking Glacier National Park. It was so beautiful. But I'm alone in this tiny little tent, and I'm just like, I don't believe bears. And that's the only way I can sleep. And I usually, I try to listen for a while, and then I put earplugs in, and I'm like, just take me because I'm tired. But we were asked to go out there, and it was fascinating because the people from the Blackfoot tribe, they say that their hairy man, which is what they call the gorilla, I always get chills, the gorillas and the orangutans and the chimps, hairy man, right, are real. They call them the Inamitapi, and it means hairy man. And they just talk about it matter-of-factly. They do not talk about it as a moral tale or something to scare their children with. They talk about it like the one lady, she owns a little store on the reservation, and she's like, yeah, there was just one in my dumpster the other day, and I wish they would leave it alone. And then another guy took us for a walk, and he was showing us the ridge where one had walked up there last Tuesday. You know, it was just very matter-of-fact that they just say that they're real. Now, they do include them in their stories and oral traditions and things like that, but if you look on the right, that is a rock painting of hairy man, and it's part of a creation story, right? So people will often say, oh, well, it's just a story. But the problem is that you have these paintings with other things that look like goats and lizards and grasshoppers and eagles and things like that. And the coyote is a big part of their creation tale as well. So why do we all of a sudden or always just say, okay, but the hairy man, that's made up. Everything else is real. That's the only thing made up. I at least would say that I 100% think that they at least were real at one time. But I do think that they could be around still. But that's the hairy man from the Thule Indian tribe, I believe, out in California. I think that's right. I could be getting that wrong. On the left, you have the Juniqua from British Columbia, from Vancouver Island. They have dances and costumes. They talk about how these Bigfoot, hairy man, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them. Actually, I don't like it when you call them Bigfoot. But these creatures, how they, eat mussels on the shoreline, and all of these different things that they do and how they catch fish. And it's very much a real creature. And if you look at their totem poles, for lack of a better word, out in the Pacific Northwest, you have, and here's one of the Pacific Northwest hairy man. You have, like, say, a whale, and then you have the hairy man, and then you have an eagle, and then another animal, and these big carvings. And I'm like, okay, so why is this thing that looks really like an ape that were carved way before we got here to be able to tell them what apes or even monkeys were like? Why is it there? Unless they saw something like that. So I find it to be incredibly fascinating. And And not only do I find it to be fascinating, but I find it to be important, because when you look in Africa and Asia and all the places where scientists want to sometimes, I feel, poo-poo what the natives were saying, what if we're doing the same thing? And what if they are here and our tribes, almost every single one, says that they're real? What if we're just saying, oh, that's nice? You know, I find it to be patronizing, here both ways. That we just dismiss that without really looking into it. I at least think it's really worth looking